Before dawn, an elderly woman wakes to the sound of her door being violently thrown open. Every day she is humiliated and forced to work as if she were invisible. But her son arrives without warning and witnesses the abuse with his own eyes. Faced with his mother's bruises, he throws his wife out and confronts the truth he has avoided for far too long. If this story caught your interest, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and tell us what city you're watching from. Let's continue. The pre-dawn silence in Chicago had something sacred about it. In that affluent Lincoln Park neighborhood, where imposing mansions rose behind electronic gates and high walls, the city slept a peaceful sleep, protected by the sense of security that money provided. But inside house number 347 on Willow Creek Lane, the silence hid truths that no amount of wealth could erase. Eleanor woke with a start when her bedroom door burst open with a bang. Her heart hammered in her chest, that tired organ that had already seen so many dawns, so many joys and so many sorrows. At 73, she could still remember when she used to wake, up naturally, to the sound of birds in the yard of the old house where she raised her son. Now every morning began like this, with a shock, with fear, with that feeling of not belonging in her own home. The harsh light from the hallway flooded the small room where she slept. It wasn't the main guest room, that was reserved for important visitors. Eleanor occupied the former maid's room, a space at the back of the house near the service area, where the smell of laundry detergent and bleach was a constant companion. The walls were white and bare, without a single painting, without a single photograph to remind anyone that someone with a history, with a past, with memories, lived there. Patricia stood in the doorway, still in her wine-colored silk robe, her blonde hair perfectly brushed despite the hour. She always woke up looking impeccable, as if she slept already made up and styled, ready to face the world with that smile that fooled everyone except her mother-in-law. "Good morning, Eleanor. I hope you slept well because there's a lot of work ahead today. The entire house needs a deep cleaning. I have important guests this afternoon and I can't have anyone over with the house in this state." Eleanor sat up slowly in bed, feeling her back protest with every movement. The pain was a constant companion, a physical reminder that her body no longer had the stamina it once did. But complaining was pointless. She had tried in the beginning when she still believed her son would see what was happening. Now she knew it was better to keep silent. "Patricia, I don't know if I can do all that today. My back is very sore and—" Patricia's expression changed instantly. The smile vanished, replaced by a cutting coldness that turned her blue eyes into chips of ice. "Oh, your back is sore, how convenient. You know, Eleanor, I don't complain about working all day managing this house, taking care of everything so Brian can have a comfortable life. And you who live here without paying a cent, without contributing anything, think it's too much to ask for a little collaboration?" That wasn't how Patricia spoke when Brian was around. In front of her husband, she was all kindness, all concern. "Eleanor, let me help you with that. Eleanor, I made your favorite tea. Eleanor, how about we rest together in the living room?" But when he left for work, when the front door closed and the sound of his car faded down the street, the mask came off. "I'm just saying that maybe I could do a little less today. I'm not refusing to help, Patricia. I've never refused." Patricia took a step into the room, crossing her arms over her chest. The diamond ring on her finger glittered even in the dim light, a symbol of everything she had gained by marrying Brian. "Less you want to do even less because from less. What I can see, you already do almost nothing. Joanna does the heavy lifting, I manage everything. And you just need to keep a few rooms tidy. It's the least you can do to compensate for living here for free." The words were like needles, small and sharp, penetrating slowly but deeply. Eleanor lowered her eyes, feeling shame burn her cheeks. How had she reached this point? How had she become a burden to her own family? "I'll do what's necessary," she said softly. "Good. Then get up. It's already 6 in the morning, and you have a lot to do before the guests arrive." Patricia left the room without waiting for a reply, her plush slippers making a muffled sound on the hardwood floor of the hallway. Eleanor sat on the bed for a few more moments, gathering the strength to start another day. Through the small window that overlooked the backyard, she could see the sky beginning to lighten, that pale blue that preceded sunrise. She remembered when she used to wake up happy, when dawn represented possibilities and not another day of trial. She stood up with difficulty, leaning first on the nightstand, then on the wall. The small mirror above the dresser showed her reflection, and she barely recognized herself. When had she become this stooped woman with sunken eyes and completely white hair? Time had passed without her noticing, taking with it her strength, her beauty, her dignity. She dressed in the uniform Patricia had chosen for her, a simple set of grey pants and a blouse, the same colour Joanna wore. It didn't matter that Eleanor was the mother of the man of the house. She was to dress like a maid so as not to confuse the guests. Patricia had made that very clear. Upon leaving her room, she found Joanna in the kitchen, already preparing breakfast. The housekeeper was in her early 40s, having come from rural Mississippi in search of a better life in the city. She was thin and had expressive eyes that seemed to hold many untold stories. When she saw Eleanor enter the kitchen, her face lit up with a discreet smile. "Good morning, Mrs. Eleanor. I've already made some nice hot coffee. Would you like a cup?" "Good morning, Joanna. Yes, I'll have one, thank you." Joanna served the coffee carefully, adding 2 spoonfuls of sugar, just the way Eleanor liked it. This small gesture of kindness, of attention, was like a balm amidst the coldness that dominated that house. "How's your back today?" Joanna asked in a low voice, always careful not to be overheard. "Sore, but I'll manage. Patricia said there's a lot of work today." Joanna shook her head, her lips pressed into a thin line of silent disapproval. She knew what went on in that house. She saw everything, heard everything, but her position was delicate. One wrong word, one gesture of solidarity interpreted as conspiracy, and she could lose her job. And Joanna couldn't afford to be unemployed. She had 2 children to raise on her own, bills to pay, dreams of giving her boys a better education than she'd had. "If you need help with anything heavy, call me," she said, lightly touching Eleanor's arm. "But do it when she's not looking." "Thank you, my dear." The 2 women exchanged a look of complicity, a mutual understanding that needed no words. They were on the same side of an invisible line that divided that house between those who commanded and those who obeyed. The day passed in a blur of endless chores. Eleanor cleaned the bathrooms, wiped down all the furniture in the living room, organized the library where Brian kept his law books, folded towels that were already folded, and straightened pillows that were already in place. Patricia would appear from time to time, always finding some flaw, always demanding that something be redone. "This isn't good enough. The drawing room needs to be impeccable. Do it again." And Eleanor would do it again. Around 11 in the morning, her back couldn't take it anymore. The pain had turned into a constant burning sensation that radiated from her spine down to her legs. She was cleaning the glass doors of the veranda when she stumbled, grabbing onto the railing to keep from falling. Joanna rushed to help her. "Mrs. Eleanor, you need to rest. Come, sit down for a bit." "I can't, Joanna. There's still so much to do." But before they could say another word, Patricia appeared on the veranda, her eyes narrowed in suspicion. "What's going on here? Why are you 2 standing around talking instead of working?" "Mrs. Eleanor slipped. I was just helping." "Oh, she slipped. How strange. It seems you've been very clumsy lately, haven't you, Eleanor? Always with some pain, always with some excuse." "It's not an excuse, Patricia. I really... You know what I think? I think you're getting too old for some things. Maybe you need more specialized care in a place where they can give you the attention you deserve." The threat hung in the air like a dark cloud. Eleanor knew that look, knew exactly what Patricia was implying. For weeks, her daughter-in-law had been making vague comments about nursing homes, about places specialized in caring for the elderly, always with that tone of false concern that fooled anyone who didn't know her true intentions. "I'm fine, I just need a moment." "Then get back to work. The guests arrive in 3 hours and this house needs to be perfect." Patricia strode off the veranda, leaving behind the expensive perfume she wore, an imported fragrance Brian had given her for their last wedding anniversary. Joanna waited until she was sure Patricia was gone before speaking. "Mrs. Eleanor, this isn't right. You can't go on like this." "What can I do, Joanna? This is my son's house. I have nowhere else to go." And it was true. After her husband passed, Away 5 years ago, leaving debts Eleanor never knew existed. She had lost everything. The house where she raised Brian, where she had lived for 40 years of marriage, where she had planted roses in the garden and painted the walls with her own hands, it had all been taken to pay off creditors. Nothing was left. Not the house, not her savings, not even the antique furniture that held sentimental value. Brian took her in, of course. He was her only son, her only living relative. But with Brian came Patricia, and with Patricia came a hell disguised as a home. Brian arrived home shortly after noon, as he always did on Fridays. He was a handsome man of 42, tall, with his hair starting to go grey at the temples, which only added to his charm as a successful lawyer. He had built a solid career, a prosperous firm, an enviable reputation in Chicago's legal world. Upon entering the house, he was greeted by Patricia with a warm kiss and a radiant smile. "My love, what a surprise to see you home early. I cancelled my afternoon meeting. I thought I'd have lunch at home with you both." "How wonderful, Eleanor! Look who's here! Come say hello to your son." Eleanor appeared from the kitchen, wiping her hands on a dish towel. Seeing Brian, her face lit up with a genuine smile, the first of the day. No matter what she was going through, seeing her son always brought a spark of joy to her tired heart. "Brian, my son, it's so good to see you." He hugged her, but it was a quick, distracted hug, the kind one gives out of social obligation rather than true affection. Eleanor felt the difference. There was a time when her son's hugs lasted longer, when he would ask how she was, when he actually cared about the answer. "How are you, Mum?" "I'm well, my son. Just working to make everything nice for your guests." "What guests?" he asked, looking at Patricia. "Darling, I told you. The people from the club are coming for tea this afternoon. They're important people, you know. We need to make a good impression." "Oh, that's right. I completely forgot." Patricia linked her arm through Brian's, leading him to the living room with the casual air of someone who always gets what she wants. "You work too hard, my love. That's why you forget things. But don't worry, everything is under control. Your mother and Joanna are making everything impeccable." During lunch, Eleanor ate in silence in the kitchen, as Patricia had suggested was more appropriate. After all, the guests could arrive at any moment, and it would be strange for them to find her sitting at the table as if she were part of the family. Brian didn't even question his mother's absence. He was busy listening to Patricia talk about their plans to renovate the house, about the trip to Europe they wanted to take, about the new car she had seen at the dealership. After lunch, Brian locked himself in his office to handle some urgent cases. Eleanor went back to work, preparing the living room to receive the guests. She arranged the pillows for the third time, cleaned the coffee table again, and adjusted the flowers Patricia had bought at the most expensive florist in the neighborhood. At 3 o'clock sharp, the guests began to arrive. There were 4 elegant women, all friends of Patricia's from the club where she played tennis and attended social events. They wore designer clothes, carried handbags. That cost more than Eleanor used to earn in a year when she was still working, and spoke with that affected accent that tried to imitate a southern drawl but sounded forced and artificial. Patricia greeted them effusively, with air kisses and compliments on their hair, their shoes, their jewelry. Then she led them to the living room, where everything was prepared: cakes, pies, snacks, and imported tea served in fine china cups. Eleanor was instructed to serve the tea, to circulate among the guests offering sweets, and to collect empty cups. Patricia introduced her casually. "This is Brian's mother. She's been living with us ever since she was left all alone, poor thing." The tone was one of compassion, but there was something more in the words, a subtle insinuation that her friends picked up on immediately. "How generous of you both to take care of her," commented one of the women, a brunette with light eyes named Francesca. "It's the least we can do," Patricia replied with a smile. "Brian is very attached to his mother, you know how it is, and I couldn't deny him this comfort, even if it's a lot of work sometimes." "A lot of work?" asked another, a platinum blonde named Adriana. Patricia lowered her voice as if sharing an intimate secret. "Well, you know how it is with older people. Sometimes they get a bit confused, forget things, make up stories. You have to be patient." Eleanor, who was collecting a cup at that moment, pretended not to hear, but every word was a stab. Patricia was planting seeds of doubt, constructing a narrative in which she, the mother-in-law, was a difficult burden to bear. "You're such an example, Patricia," Francesca said. "Not everyone would have that kind of patience." "It's a challenge," Patricia admitted, "but I do it for the love of my husband." The women continued chatting about other things: tennis tournaments, trips, gossip about mutual acquaintances. Eleanor moved among them like a shadow, invisible except when they needed more tea or another piece of cake. No one addressed her directly. No one asked about her life, her interests, her opinions. It was as if she didn't exist as a person, only as a function, a servant unworthy of consideration. When the guests finally left, it was almost 7 in the evening. Eleanor was exhausted. The pain in her back had intensified to the point of being almost unbearable, but there were still dishes to wash, the living room to tidy, and the kitchen to organize. Joanna tried to help, but Patricia intervened. "Joanna, you can go. It's time for you to leave. Eleanor can finish up on her own." "But Mrs. Patricia, there's still so much—" "Joanna, when I say you can go, it means you can go. Or would you prefer to work overtime without getting paid for it?" "No, ma'am." "Then go." Joanna cast an apologetic glance at Eleanor before grabbing her bag and leaving through the back door. They were left alone, the mother-in-law and daughter-in-law, in that large, silent house. "Eleanor, when you're done here, I want you to clean the kitchen as well, and leave everything organized for breakfast tomorrow. I don't want to wake up to a mess." "Patricia, please, I'm so tired. Can't it wait until tomorrow?" "Wait until tomorrow? And who's going to make breakfast? Me? Do you think I wake up early to do that? You're living here for free, Eleanor. For free. The least you can do is help with the house." "I know I'm living here for free, Patricia, and I'm grateful for it. But I'm not young anymore. I can't work this hard." Patricia took 2 steps toward Eleanor, her face transformed into a mask of coldness. "You know what the problem is, Eleanor? You're used to being spoiled by Brian. You're used to thinking you can slack off and everyone will feel sorry for you. But I don't feel sorry for you. I don't believe this story about your back pain. I think it's all an excuse not to work." "It's not an excuse, Patricia. I swear to you that—" "Enough, I don't want to hear any more excuses. Finish your work or we'll have a serious conversation with Brian about your future in this house." Patricia left the kitchen, leaving Eleanor alone with the tears that finally managed to escape. She cried in silence, leaning against the sink, trying to gather the strength to finish what needed to be done. Her hands trembled as she picked up the sponge and began to wash the dishes. Every movement was torture, every clean plate a small victory against the pain that consumed her. It was almost 10 at night when she finally finished. The kitchen was immaculate, gleaming under the cold ceiling light. Eleanor looked around, feeling a mixture of pride and despair. Pride because she had managed to finish despite everything. Despair because she knew tomorrow would be the same, and the day after that, and so on, until her body could no longer take it. She dragged herself to her room at the back of the house, each step a monumental effort. As she passed through the hallway, she saw a light on in Brian and Patricia's room. She heard laughter, quiet conversation, the intimacy of a couple sharing private moments. She felt a different kind of pang, a pain that wasn't physical but emotional. Her son was there, so close and yet so far away. Did he have any idea what was happening under his own roof? Or did he know and prefer not to see? In her room, Eleanor lay down on the bed without even changing. She was too tired, too sore. She closed her eyes and tried to sleep, but sleep wouldn't come. Her mind remained active, replaying every humiliation of the day, every cruel word, every look of contempt. She remembered a different time when she was young and full of dreams, when she held baby Brian in her arms for the first time and promised herself she would be the best mother in the world. Where had it all gone wrong? At what point had she become invisible in the eyes of her own son? The tears returned, soaking the old, thin pillow Patricia had chosen for her. Eleanor cried until she had no tears left, until exhaustion finally won, and sleep came as a temporary relief. But even in her sleep, she knew that tomorrow the nightmare would begin again, and the day after tomorrow, and the day after that, until something changed or until she simply couldn't take it anymore. The weeks that followed were a slow, inexorable descent into an ever-deepening abyss. Eleanor woke every day with the same heavy feeling in her chest, that anticipatory anguish of someone who knows suffering is waiting just on the other side of the bedroom door. And Patricia did not disappoint. With each passing day, the demands increased, the humiliations became more subtle and sophisticated, and the cruelty took on the shape of normalcy. One Saturday morning, Brian woke up earlier than usual. It was rare for him to be home on weekends. He usually had commitments at the office or business dinners that ran late, but that day he decided to spend more time at home, perhaps in an unconscious attempt to reconnect with something he didn't even know he was losing. Eleanor was in the kitchen preparing coffee when he appeared, still in his pajamas, his hair disheveled from sleep. "Good morning, Mum." "Good morning, my son. Did you sleep well?" "I did. And you?" The question was casual, asked without really expecting a sincere answer. But there was something in Brian's voice, a softness Eleanor hadn't heard in months, that made her hesitate before replying. "I slept well, son." The lie came naturally. She couldn't say that she spent her nights awake, that her back hurt so much it was impossible to find a comfortable position, that thoughts of the future kept her vigilant until dawn. She couldn't place that weight on her son's shoulders. He already had so many worries, so many responsibilities. Brian poured himself some coffee and sat at the kitchen table, something he hadn't done in a long time. He usually had his coffee in a hurry, standing up while checking emails. On his phone, "Mom, I wanted to talk to you about something." Eleanor's heart skipped a beat. Had he noticed? Was he finally going to acknowledge what was happening? "Of course, my son. What is it?" "Patricia is planning a party here at the house. A big one, you know. To celebrate our 5th wedding anniversary, there will be over 100 guests." Eleanor felt her initial enthusiasm fade. It wasn't about her that he wanted to talk. It never was. "How wonderful, son. 5 years already." "Yeah, time flew by. And Patricia is super excited. She hired an event company. There will be catering, decorations, everything very elegant. The house will look beautiful." "I'm sure it will," Eleanor murmured. "It's just that—" Brian hesitated, searching for the right words. "Patricia is a little worried about some details. She's a perfectionist, you know how she is. And with so many important people coming, she wants everything to be perfect." "I understand." "She suggested that maybe you could spend that weekend somewhere else. Not that you're not welcome, of course, but with so many people, so much commotion, it might be tiring for you. And Patricia will need all the rooms to accommodate some relatives coming from out of town." The silence that followed was heavy. Eleanor looked at her son, trying to find in his eyes some sign that he realized the absurdity of what he was saying. She lived in that house. It was her home too. But she was being kicked out, albeit temporarily, because her presence was inconvenient. "Where would I go, Brian?" "You could spend the weekend at a hotel. I'll pay, of course. A nice, comfortable place. It could even be a pleasant experience. You never stay in hotels. You could take the opportunity to relax. Alone in a hotel room while you all celebrate here. Is that what you're telling me?" Brian seemed uncomfortable for the first time. "Mom, it's not like that. It's just to make things easier." "Patricia." "It's always Patricia," Eleanor interrupted, a sudden spark of courage igniting her words. "Everything is always to make things easier for Patricia. What about me? When does anyone in this house think about making things easier for me?" "Mom, please, don't exaggerate. Patricia takes very good care of you. She's always concerned about your well-being." Eleanor opened her mouth to reply, to finally tell him everything, to reveal every humiliation, every cruel word, every day of ignored pain. But just then Patricia entered the kitchen, beautiful and fragrant, with a smile that lit up the room. "Good morning, my dears. What a joy to see you two having coffee together. It's so rare for us to have these family moments." She kissed Brian on the forehead, and then turned to Eleanor with a look of feigned concern. "Eleanor, I hope you're feeling well today. I noticed you were a bit pale yesterday. Are you not eating properly?" "I'm fine, Patricia." "Good. Brian, my love, have you talked to your mother about the party yet?" "I have, yes. So, Eleanor, What did you think of the hotel idea? I chose one very close by, very comfortable. You'll love it. I don't want to go to a hotel, Patricia. Patricia's smile faltered for a fraction of a second before she recomposed herself. You don't? But I thought you'd like it. It's a beautiful place, with room service, cable TV, everything you need. I want to stay in my home. Your home? Patricia repeated, and there was venom in that question. Eleanor, this is Brian's house. His house, and he is kindly trying to find a solution so that everyone can be comfortable during the party. You're being selfish. Patricia, Brian intervened, uncomfortable with the turn the conversation was taking. It doesn't have to be like this. Mum, if you really don't want to go to the hotel, we can think of something else. Of course we can, Patricia said quickly, changing her strategy. You can stay in your little room at the back, but you must understand there will be a lot of noise, a lot of movement, and you won't be able to circulate through the house during the party. It would be embarrassing for everyone. Embarrassing? Eleanor repeated, feeling tears welling up. Well, yes, the guests are important, influential people, businessmen, judges, politicians. They'll expect to see an organized home with a well-structured family. It wouldn't be appropriate for you to appear in the middle of the party as if... Patricia left the sentence hanging, letting Eleanor mentally fill in the worst possibilities. As if I were what, Patricia? An embarrassment? A problem? Nobody said that, Mom, Brian interjected, clearly wanting to end the discussion. Look, you do what you want. Stay, go, whatever. You decide is fine. We're not going to fight over this. But the damage was done. The message had been delivered with crystal clarity. Eleanor was an embarrassment, an inconvenient presence that needed to be hidden when important people came to visit. The rest of the day was tense. Eleanor took refuge in her room, claiming a headache. It wasn't a total lie. Her head was throbbing in a way that made it hard to think about anything else. She lay in bed, staring at the white, cracked ceiling, thinking about how her life had become so small, so meaningless. The following week, preparations for the party began to take over the house. Patricia hired a team of professional cleaners who turned every room upside down. Furniture was moved, carpets were steam cleaned, chandeliers were polished until they gleamed. The house was transformed into a stage, a set of artificial perfection. Throughout this process, Eleanor was instructed to remain in her room or the kitchen, out of the professionals' way. Patricia didn't want her to confuse the cleaning crew or worse, try to help and end up getting in the way. Joanna watched everything with growing indignation. In a moment, when she managed to be alone with Eleanor, she vented, "This isn't right, Mrs. Eleanor. You can't let this woman treat you like this. What can I do, Joanna? Where would I go? You have rights. You're the mother of the man of the house. You should talk to Mr. Brian, tell him everything that's happening. And what if he doesn't believe me? What if he sides with her?" The possibility was too terrifying to contemplate. Brian was all Eleanor had in the world. If he rejected her, if he chose Patricia over her, what would be left? A completely empty life, without purpose, without love, without family. Joanna sighed, understanding the dilemma. "I'll keep an eye out, and if you need me for anything, you can count on me, no matter what that woman says." "Thank you, my dear. You're too good to me." But Joanna's kindness did not go unnoticed by Patricia. In the following days, she began to create situations that undermined the trust between the housekeeper and the elderly woman. One afternoon, Patricia called Joanna into the living room, where she was sitting elegantly on the white leather sofa, flipping through a design magazine. "Joanna, we need to talk." "Yes, Mrs. Patricia. I've noticed you've been spending a lot of time talking with Eleanor. I know it's kind of you, but I'm worried it's interfering with your work." "I always finish my work, Mrs. Patricia. You've never complained before." No, it's not a complaint. Just an observation. It's just that, you see, Eleanor gets confused sometimes. She's at a delicate age, and I've noticed that she makes things up. Makes things up. Yes, stories, situations that never happened. It's normal in older people, you know. And I wouldn't want her putting strange ideas in your head, or getting you involved in problems that don't exist. Joanna swallowed hard, understanding perfectly what Patricia was doing. She was building a preemptive narrative, planting doubts in case Eleanor tried to reveal the abuse. "I understand, Mrs. Patricia." "Good. And there's one more thing. Some of my jewelry has gone missing. Nothing of great value, but pieces I'm fond of. You haven't seen anything unusual around, have you?" "No, ma'am. I haven't seen anything." "It's just that Eleanor sometimes takes things without realizing it. It's not her fault, it's her age. But if you notice anything, let me know immediately. Okay?" "Okay." Joanna left the room with a heavy heart. She knew exactly what Patricia was doing, planting the seed of mistrust, preparing the ground to accuse Eleanor of something she hadn't done, and her suspicion was confirmed 2 days later. Patricia started screaming from the master suite, calling for Brian and Joanna. "It's gone! My diamond bracelet is gone! I left it here on the vanity, and now it's not here." Brian came running, concerned. "Are you sure you left it there?" "Absolutely. It was here last night, I remember perfectly. Someone took it." "Who would come into our room? To steal something?" Patricia paused dramatically, as if reluctant to say what she was about to suggest. "Brian, I didn't want to bring this up, but your mother has been acting very strangely lately, forgetful, confused, and she has access to every room in the house. Are you suggesting my mother stole your bracelet?" "Not stole, took without realizing. It's different. People with memory problems sometimes do that. They take objects without being aware of what they're doing." "That's ridiculous." "Is it? Then how do you explain the bracelet's disappearance?" Brian had no answer. The seed of doubt had been planted. Even if he didn't want to believe it, the possibility now existed in his mind. "I'll look for it," he said finally. "It must be around here somewhere. You might have put it away and forgotten." "I never forget where I put my jewelry, Brian. Never." That afternoon, Brian discreetly asked his mother to accompany him to her room. Eleanor immediately sensed something was wrong from the tone of his voice, the closed expression on his face. "Mom, I need to ask you a question, and I want you to be honest with me." "What is it, son?" "Patricia's diamond bracelet is missing. Have you seen it anywhere? Maybe you picked it up by mistake to put it somewhere safe." Eleanor felt her world crumble. Her own son was standing there, in front of her, suggesting she had stolen something. "Brian, I didn't take any bracelet. How could you think such a thing?" "I'm not accusing you, Mum. I'm just trying to understand what happened. Patricia is right to be upset. That bracelet is worth a lot of money." "And you think I would steal from you? From my own family?" "No one is saying steal, Mom, but sometimes older people get confused. They take things without realizing." "I'm not confused, Brian. I didn't take the damn bracelet." Eleanor's voice came out louder than she intended, laden with a pain that went far beyond that specific accusation. It was the accumulated pain of months of humiliation, disrespect, and invisibility. Brian recoiled, surprised by her reaction. "Okay, Mom. If you say you didn't take it, I believe you. But you don't mind if I take a look around your room just to be sure?" "Go ahead, look all you want." Brian began to carefully search the room, opening drawers, looking inside the closet, checking under the bed. And then, to Eleanor's horror, he found something. The diamond bracelet was hidden inside an old shoebox at the back of the closet. The silence that followed was deafening. Brian held the bracelet in his hand, looking from the jewelry to his mother, trying to process what had just happened. "I can explain," Eleanor began, but the words died in her throat. How could she explain? She hadn't put the bracelet there. She had never even seen that bracelet before, but who would believe her? "Mom, what is this?" "I don't know, Brian. I swear it wasn't me who put it there." "But it was in your closet. How did it get there if it wasn't you?" Eleanor had no answer. And in that moment, as she looked at the expression of disappointment and confusion on her son's face, she understood the extent of the trap Patricia had set. It was a perfect plan. If she accused her daughter-in-law, it would sound like a desperate excuse from someone caught red-handed. If she remained silent, she would be seen as guilty. There was no way out. Patricia appeared at the bedroom door as if summoned by some invisible signal. "Did you find it?" she asked, and there was a poorly disguised triumph in her voice. Brian showed her the bracelet. "It was here, in my mother's closet." Patricia brought a hand to her chest, in a theatrical gesture of shock and sadness. "Oh, Eleanor, why would you do that? If you wanted some jewelry, you just had to ask. I would have given you a piece." "I didn't take that bracelet, Patricia, and you know that very well." The two women stared at each other, and for a moment Patricia's mask slipped, revealing the pure cruelty underneath. But it was only for an instant. Soon the understanding smile returned. "Brian, I think your mother needs professional help. This kind of behavior isn't normal." "She doesn't need professional help," Brian said, but his voice was uncertain. "It must have been a misunderstanding." "A misunderstanding? The bracelet was hidden in her closet. If it were a mistake, it would be on top of the bed, somewhere visible. But it was hidden. That shows intent." Brian ran a hand through his hair, a gesture he made when he was stressed and didn't know how to handle a situation. "Let's just drop it. The bracelet was found. Everything's fine." But Patricia wasn't willing to let it go. "It's not fine, Brian. Your mother needs specialized care, a place where they can give her the attention she needs, where they can monitor her activities to prevent this kind of situation." "Are you talking about a nursing home?" "I'm talking about a place where she can live with dignity and safety, and where we can have our lives back without constant worry." Eleanor felt her legs give way. She sat on the bed, her head spinning. So that was it. Patricia's whole plan was revealing itself. It wasn't just about humiliation or control. It was about getting rid of her completely. "Brian, I'm begging you. Don't send me away. I didn't do anything. It was her who put the bracelet there. I know it was." "Mom, please. Believe me, son. Believe your mother." Brian looked at his wife, then at his mother, torn between two completely different versions of the same reality. "I need to think," he said finally. "Let's talk about this later when we're all calmer." He left the room, taking Patricia with him. Eleanor was left alone, sitting on the bed, holding in her trembling hands the certainty that she was losing the battle. Patricia was smarter, more articulate, more convincing, and she, Eleanor, was just a tired old woman that nobody wanted around anymore. Joanna entered the room a few minutes later, carrying a glass of water. "I heard everything, Mrs. Eleanor, and I know you didn't take that bracelet." "How can you know?" "Because I saw Mrs. Patricia go into your room last night. I thought it was strange, but I didn't say anything. Now I understand what she was doing. You have to tell Brian." Joanna shook her head sadly. "He won't believe me. He'll think I'm lying to defend you. Mrs. Patricia is very clever. She'll find a way to get rid of me too if I open my mouth." "So what do we do?" "I don't know, Mrs. Eleanor, but we can't give up. There has to be a way to expose the truth." The two women stood there, united by a common enemy, but powerless to do anything. The truth existed, yes, but it was buried under layers of such well-constructed manipulation that it seemed impossible to reach. That night, Eleanor couldn't sleep. She lay awake thinking about all the choices she had made in life, all the moments that had led her here. She remembered the day Brian was born, how she held that tiny baby and promised to always protect him. She never imagined that one day she would be the one needing protection from his choices. Through the window, she could see the lights of Chicago twinkling in the distance, millions of lives happening simultaneously, each with its own dramas, its own pains. And she was just another sad story in a city that had too many sad stories to tell. The days leading up to the wedding anniversary party were marked by a tension that permeated every corner of the house. Brian was distant, torn between loyalty to his mother and trust in his wife. Patricia, for her part, had won an important battle and now moved with even more confidence, knowing she had her husband exactly where she wanted him. Eleanor lived in a kind of limbo. She was no longer openly treated as part of the family, but she hadn't been sent away yet either. Brian had postponed the decision about the nursing home, claiming he needed more time to think. But everyone in the house knew it was only a matter of time. On a rainy Thursday afternoon, Patricia received a visit from an old college friend, Marcia, an elegant woman who worked as the manager of one of Chicago's most exclusive nursing homes. They sat in the living room, sipping imported tea as the rain drummed against the windows. Eleanor was instructed to serve the tea and then leave, but she stayed long enough to overhear part of the conversation. "So, Patricia, Tell me more about your mother-in-law's situation, Marcia said, flipping through a sleek brochure that showed pictures of luxurious facilities. It's complicated, Marcia. She's becoming more and more difficult, forgetful, confused, sometimes aggressive. And my husband, poor thing, suffers so much seeing his mother in this state. I understand perfectly. It's a delicate situation for everyone. But at Serene Meadows, we have the entire infrastructure to handle cases like this. Trained professionals, 24-hour medical supervision, therapeutic activities. But she won't want to go, she'll resist. Marcia smiled sympathetically. They always resist at first, but then they adapt. And you can visit her whenever you want, of course. The conversation continued, but Eleanor couldn't bear to hear any more. She left the room with a heavy heart, finally understanding the full extent of Patricia's plan. It wasn't just about humiliation or control. It was about completely eliminating her presence from her son's life. Joanna found her in the kitchen, crying silently as she washed dishes. "Mrs. Eleanor, what is it?" "She wants to send me to a nursing home. I heard the whole conversation." "You can't let that happen. You have to talk to Mr. Bryan." "He won't listen to me, Joanna. Not after what happened with the bracelet. Then we need to prove that it was Mrs. Patricia who put the bracelet in your room." "How? We have no proof of anything." Joanna was silent for a moment, thinking. Then her eyes lit up with an idea. "What if we recorded her? What if we could get her to admit what she did?" "How do you plan to do that?" "I don't know yet. But there has to be a way." The two women spent the next few days trying to come up with a plan, but each idea seemed more impossible than the last. Patricia was too smart, too cautious. She would never say anything incriminating near witnesses or anything that could be recorded. The wedding anniversary party arrived on a sunny Saturday in October. The house was transformed, decorated with white and gold flowers, crystal chandeliers reflecting the sunlight, and uniformed waiters circulating with trays of champagne and sophisticated canapes. Eleanor was instructed to remain in her room for the entire party. Patricia had been clear. She didn't want her mother-in-law to be seen by anyone. It would be embarrassing, she said, to have to explain to the guests why Brian's mother lived there dressed like a maid. So Eleanor stayed locked in her little room at the back, listening to the music, the laughter, the lively conversations coming from the garden where the party was taking place. It was like being present and absent at the same time, like being a ghost in her own home. Around 8 in the evening, when the party was in full swing, Joanna knocked discreetly on the door. "Mrs. Eleanor, I brought you a plate of food." "Thank you, my dear. How is it out there?" "It's beautiful, lots of important people. Mrs. Patricia is radiant, showing off. The house and her husband like trophies." "And Brian?" Joanna hesitated before answering. "He seems happy. But I saw him looking around the house a few times. I think he was looking for you." "Really?" "I'm sure of it. I saw it in his eyes. He may be confused, but he still loves you." This small piece of information brought a little comfort to Eleanor's wounded heart. Her son still loved her. Maybe there was still hope, but the hope was short-lived. Around 10 o'clock, as the party was winding down and the last guests were saying their goodbyes, Eleanor heard loud voices coming from the hallway. She opened the door a crack and saw Brian and Patricia arguing. "I just wanted my mother to be part of the party," Brian was saying. "She's my mother, Patricia. She's part of the family. And I've already explained why that wouldn't be appropriate. Did you see the caliber of guests we had here? Businessmen, judges, politicians. What would they think if they saw your mother dressed like a maid circulating through the party?" "She doesn't have to be dressed like a maid. She could have worn a nice outfit." Patricia let out a bitter laugh. "Brian, wake up. Your mother is not the woman you remember from your childhood. She's old, sick, confused. It would be embarrassing for her and for us." "Don't talk about my mother like that. So you'd rather pretend you don't see reality." "She took my bracelet, Brian. She put it in her closet and then pretended she knew nothing about it." "Is that the behavior of someone in control of their own faculties?" "It was a misunderstanding. It was a symptom that she needs specialized care that we can't provide here. And you know that in your heart of hearts." Brian fell silent, his head bowed, his shoulders slumped under the weight of the decision he knew he would have to make. I don't want to send my mother to a nursing home. Nobody wants to, love. But sometimes it's for the best for everyone, including her. At Serene Meadows, she'll have medical supervision, activities, the company of other people her age. Here she spends all day alone in that little room, with nothing to do, feeling useless. I don't know, Patricia. Think about it. When I get pregnant, and I hope it's soon, will it be good for the baby to grow up in a house with a senile person? Do you want your child to witness embarrassing situations, to be afraid of their own grandmother? That last sentence was like a stab. Patricia was playing dirty, using a future baby as an emotional weapon, and it was working. Brian nodded, defeated. All right, I'll think about it. But I need time. Time is running out, Brian, and the longer we take to make this decision, the harder it gets for everyone. They walked away, and Eleanor closed her bedroom door, her heart shattered. She had heard everything. Her son was being manipulated into sending her away, and there was nothing she could do to stop it. That night she couldn't sleep. She lay awake thinking about everything she had lost, all the humiliations she had endured, how she had reached this point of despair. For the first time she seriously considered the possibility of simply leaving on her own. But where to? She had no money, no friends she could ask for help, no one but the son who now seemed willing to abandon her. On Sunday morning, while the hired cleaning crew cleared away the remnants of the party, Patricia summoned Eleanor for a talk in the living room. It was a short, direct conversation, with no witnesses. Eleanor, I'm going to be frank with you. I don't want you in this house anymore. You are a burden, a constant problem, and you're disrupting my marriage. Brian is torn between us, and that's not healthy for our relationship. I am his mother, Patricia, and I am his wife, and a wife takes priority over a mother. You've had your time with Brian. You raised him, you educated him. Now it's my turn to have a family with him, a family that doesn't include you. You can't just kick me out like this. Yes, I can. And I will. I've already spoken with Marcia from Serene Meadows. She's waiting for my call to arrange your admission. It will be within 2 weeks, a month at most. And Brian agreed to this? Patricia smiled, that cold smile that never reached her eyes. Brian will agree. He always agrees with what I want. It's just a matter of time. I'm going to tell him what you're doing. And who's going to believe you? I've already planted the seeds of doubt. He already thinks you're becoming senile, confused. If you come at him with these accusations, you'll only confirm what he already thinks. You're cruel. I'm practical, and I know what I want. I want a beautiful, comfortable life, without problems. And you, Eleanor, are a problem. Patricia stood up and left the room, leaving Eleanor alone with the terrible certainty that she had lost. There were no more options, no more hope. But that afternoon, something unexpected happened. Joanna had a habit of keeping a small notebook where she jotted down her daily tasks, reminders of things she needed to buy at the market, recipes she wanted to try. That day, while tidying the living room, she found another notebook hidden between the sofa cushions. It was a diary with a worn leather cover, and when she opened it, she immediately recognized Eleanor's shaky handwriting. The diary was filled with dated entries, starting shortly after Eleanor had moved into that house. Joanna began to read and felt tears spring to her eyes. Everything was recorded there. Every humiliation, every cruel word, every day of pain. Eleanor had documented her suffering, perhaps as a way to maintain her sanity, to prove to herself that she wasn't going crazy. In an entry from 3 weeks prior, Eleanor had written about a specific memory. It was about the day Brian was born, about how she held him for the first time and promised to always protect him, about how she never imagined that one day she would be the one needing protection from his choices. Joanna felt something break inside her. She could no longer remain silent, could no longer be complicit in this situation. Even if it cost her her job, even if Patricia tried to destroy her, too, she had to do something. She carefully put the diary away and waited for the right opportunity. She knew she had to be strategic. If she simply showed the diary to Brian, Patricia would find a way to discredit it. would say it was the fantasies of a senile mind, that Eleanor had made it all up. No, she needed more than that. She needed irrefutable proof. And then, on a Monday morning, the opportunity arose. Patricia had gone out for lunch with friends at the club, and Brian was in his office working. Eleanor was in the kitchen, preparing lunch when she began to feel an intense pain in her back, so strong it made her double over the sink. Joanna found her like that, holding onto the counter, her face contorted in pain. "Mrs. Eleanor, what is it?" "My back. I can't take it anymore." "You need to see a doctor, this isn't normal." "I can't. Patricia won't let me." "Then we'll do it without her knowing. Mr. Brian is home. I'll go get him." "No, Joanna. He's working. This is more important than work. You're in pain." Joanna left the kitchen with determination and went up to the office where Brian was working. She knocked firmly on the door. "Mr. Brian, sorry to interrupt, but your mother is very unwell." Brian stood up immediately, concern written all over his face. "What happened?" "It's her back. She's in a lot of pain. She needs a doctor." Brian ran down the stairs and found his mother in the kitchen, still bent over the sink. Seeing her like that, something inside him broke. This was his mother, the woman who had raised him, who had sacrificed so much for him. And there she was, obviously suffering, obviously needing help. "Mom, how long have you been having these pains?" "A few weeks," Eleanor murmured. "Why didn't you tell me?" "I didn't want to bother you." Brian helped his mother to a chair and then carefully asked her to lift her blouse. What he saw shocked him. Eleanor's back was covered in bruises in various stages of healing, some yellowish and old, others more recent and still purple. "My God, Mom, what happened? How did you get hurt like this?" Eleanor hesitated. This was her chance to tell him everything, to finally reveal the truth. But the fear was still there, the fear of not being believed, of being considered crazy or vindictive. "I fell, that's all." "You don't fall this much. These bruises are in different places, at different heights. This isn't from a fall." It was at that moment that Joanna decided to intervene. She couldn't let Eleanor protect Patricia one more time. "Mr. Brian, can I speak with you in private?" Brian looked from Joanna to his mother, confused. About what? About what's really been happening in this house. They went to the living room, leaving Eleanor in the kitchen. Joanna took a deep breath, gathering her courage for what she was about to do. "Mr. Brian, your mother didn't fall. She's not becoming senile, and she didn't take that bracelet." "What are you talking about?" "I'm talking about the truth you don't want to see. Your mother is being mistreated in this house. Mrs. Patricia forces her to work far beyond what her body can handle. That's why she has bruises. They're from overexertion, from carrying too much weight, from doing chores a woman her age shouldn't be doing." Brian turned pale. "That doesn't make sense. Patricia takes good care of my mother." "Do you really believe that? When was the last time you stopped to really talk to your mother, to ask how she was, not just in passing, but to actually care about the answer?" Brian didn't reply because there was no reply. He knew he had grown distant from his mother, that he had let Patricia manage everything related to domestic life while he focused on work. "And there's more," Joanna continued. "The bracelet. I saw Mrs. Patricia go into your mother's room that night. She planted that bracelet there to make your mother look guilty. It was all a setup. Why didn't you tell me this before?" "Because I'm scared, Mr. Brian. Mrs. Patricia threatens me whenever she notices I'm helping your mother. She's already hinted that she'll fire me, and I need this job, you know that. I have children to raise on my own." Brian ran a hand through his hair, that gesture he made when he was overwhelmed. "I need proof. I can't just accuse my wife based on assumptions. I have proof." Joanna went to her room and returned with Eleanor's diary. She handed it to Brian. "Read it. It's all in here. Every day, every humiliation, every moment of suffering. Your mother documented everything." Brian opened the diary with trembling hands and began to read. With each page, his face grew more tense, paler. There it was, the raw, unvarnished truth. There was no denying it, no other way to interpret it. His mother had suffered barbarically, and he, blinded by professional success and the comfortable life Patricia provided, had seen nothing. When he finished reading, Brian had tears in his eyes. He closed the diary and held it against his chest. How could I have been so blind? How did I let this happen? You didn't. No? Joanna tried to console him. I should have known. I'm her son. It was my responsibility to protect her. Brian went back to the kitchen where Eleanor was still sitting, trying to manage the pain in her back. He knelt in front of her and took her hands. Mum, forgive me. Please forgive me for everything. Eleanor looked at her son in confusion. Forgive you for what, my son? For not protecting you, for believing the lies, for letting you suffer. And then, for the first time in months, Eleanor allowed herself to cry in front of her son. She cried with relief, with accumulated pain, with gratitude for finally being seen, being heard, being believed. The events of that afternoon would be forever etched in the memory of everyone living in that house. Brian had immediately called the family doctor, Dr. Evans, an experienced grey-haired man who had known the family for years. He arrived in less than an hour, carrying a black bag and the serious expression of someone who understands they've been called for something urgent. The examination was thorough and painful. Eleanor had to remove her blouse while the doctor examined each bruise, each mark, each sign of physical suffering her body bore. Brian was present, watching in silence, and with each of the doctor's findings, his expression grew darker. Eleanor, Dr. Evans said gently, these bruises are not from falls. They are the result of repetitive and excessive strain. Have you been lifting heavy things, doing strenuous work? Eleanor glanced at Brian before answering. There was still so much fear, so much apprehension, that the truth might be used against her. I help around the house, she said finally. I do what I can. The doctor shook his head, dissatisfied with the vague answer. You are 73 years old. Your body is not meant for lifting heavy weights or intense exertion. These bruises indicate that you have been doing exactly that, and continuously. Furthermore, I see clear signs of malnutrition and extreme fatigue. Are you not eating well? I eat what everyone else eats. Dr. Evans turned to Brian. Your son needs to know the truth, Eleanor. From what I'm seeing here, you are being subjected to conditions that are unsuitable for your age and health. This needs to stop immediately, or the consequences could be severe. That was the last straw. Brian could no longer contain his emotion. He left the room without a word, went upstairs and locked himself in his office. He needed to think, to process, to decide what to do with the truth that had finally been revealed. Dr. Evans prescribed complete rest and pain medication. Before leaving, he had a quick word with Brian in the hallway. Listen, I've known your family for a long time. I don't know what's happening here, but that woman is suffering, and it's not just physical. I saw a deep sadness in her eyes, the kind of sadness that comes from within. She needs care, Brian, real care, not just medical. She needs love, dignity, and respect. I know, Doctor, and that's going to change. I promise it will change. I hope so, because if it continues like this, I'm not sure how much longer she can take it. When Patricia arrived home late that afternoon, she found an unusual scene. Eleanor was lying on the main living room sofa, the white leather one she had been forbidden to use. Brian was sitting beside her, holding her hand, and Joanna was moving about the house with a look of determination Patricia had never seen before. What is going on here? Patricia asked, taking off her sunglasses and looking around with disapproval. We need to talk, Brian said, and there was something in his voice that made Patricia realize immediately that something had changed. Talk about what? About my mother, about how she has been treated in this house. Patricia let out a nervous laugh. Treated? Your mother has been treated with all comfort and care. I don't understand what you're getting at. Brian stood up, picked up the diary from the coffee table, and handed it to Patricia. Read it. I want you to read every page. What is this? It's my mother's diary, where she recorded everything she's been through since she came to live here. Patricia opened the diary and began to flip through the pages. As she read, the color drained from her face. She knew exactly what was written there because she had been the protagonist of every situation described. This is absurd, she said finally, snapping the diary shut. These are the fantasies of a senile woman. I told you she was getting confused, making up stories. They're not fantasies, Patricia. Joanna confirmed everything, and the doctor confirmed it too. The bruises on my mother's back are not from falls. They're from overexertion, from heavy work she shouldn't have been doing. I never forced your mother to do anything. Liar! Joanna's voice cut through the air, surprising everyone. I saw everything, Mrs. Patricia. I saw you humiliate Mrs. Eleanor every day, force her to work beyond her limits, treat her as if she were less than nothing, and I have proof. What proof? Joanna took out her own cell phone and showed a series of photos she had discreetly taken over the weeks. Photos of Eleanor carrying heavy buckets of water, dragging furniture, cleaning in clearly painful positions. In every photo, the pain was etched on her face. You threatened me to keep me quiet, Joanna continued, her voice trembling but firm. You said you would fire me if I helped Mrs. Eleanor, but I can't stay silent anymore. I can't watch an innocent woman suffer like this. Patricia looked from Brian to Joanna, then to Eleanor, trying to find a way out, an explanation, a way to reverse the situation. But there was none. The truth was there, exposed, impossible to deny. And the bracelet? Brian asked, his voice dangerously calm. Joanna told me you went into my mother's room the night before we found it there. You planted that bracelet, didn't you? That's ridiculous. Why would I do something like that? To frame her, to convince me she was becoming senile, to justify sending her to a nursing home. Patricia took 2 steps back, the mask finally falling away completely. Her eyes, once always calculating and cold, now showed desperation. So what if I did? So what? She was disrupting our lives, Brian. Your mother is a dead weight in this house. She eats our food, uses our resources, and contributes nothing. I was just trying to do what was best for us. For us or for you? For us. For our marriage. How do you expect us to have a normal life with your mother here, watching us, interfering in everything? My mother never interfered in anything. She barely exists in this house because you made sure of it. You turned her into a shadow, a presence that needs to be hidden. And why? Because you were ashamed of her. Because she didn't fit into the perfect image you want to project. Exactly, yes, I am ashamed. Your mother is old, poorly dressed, with no social graces. How can I entertain my friends, important people, with her wandering around the house as if she owns the place? She is my mother, Patricia, not a pet you can hide when you have visitors. And I am your wife. Where are your priorities, Brian? With an old woman who has already lived her life, or with the woman who is building a future by your side? The word old echoed through the room like a gunshot. Eleanor, who had remained silent until then, felt the word pierce her deeply. That was how she was seen, as a useless old woman, a nuisance, someone who had already lived her life and was now just in the way. Brian looked at Patricia, as if he were seeing her for the first time. And in a way, he was. The beautiful, elegant woman he had married had revealed herself to be someone capable of cruelty, manipulation, and pure malice. I want you to leave this house, he said finally. What? You heard me. Leave. Now. You can't kick me out. This is my house too. This is my house, Patricia. It's in my name. And I am asking you to leave while I decide what to do about our marriage. You're choosing your mother over me? Patricia's voice rose an octave, bordering on hysteria. After everything we've built together? After 5 years of marriage? You forced me to choose, and yes, I choose my mother. I will always choose my mother. Patricia looked around, searching for support, but found only disapproving glares. Even Joanna, who had always been intimidated by her, now faced her with firmness. You'll regret this, she said finally, her voice full of venom. All of you. I will destroy your reputation, Brian. I'll tell everyone you abandoned your wife for a senile old woman. I will ruin you. Do what you want, but do it far away from here. Patricia stormed upstairs, furious and defeated. They could hear the sounds of drawers being opened, clothes being thrown into suitcases. Half an hour later, she came down with 3 bags, her eyes red but dry. She wasn't crying from sadness or lost love. She was crying from rage, from the frustration of having lost the battle. Before leaving, she paused at the door and cast a final look at Eleanor. You won, she said. But not for long. Women like you don't survive long in this world, you'll see." And she left, slamming the door hard enough to make the pictures on the walls tremble. The silence that followed was heavy, laden with conflicting emotions. Relief, sadness, guilt, exhaustion. Brian returned to the sofa and sat beside his mother, burying his face in his hands. "I'm so sorry, Mum. I'm so sorry for everything." Eleanor placed a hand on her son's back, that maternal gesture she had made thousands of times when he was a child and was sad or hurt. "You didn't know, my son. She fooled you too. But I should have noticed. I should have paid more attention. I was a terrible son." "Don't say that. You are a good man, Brian. You just got lost for a while." Joanna, who had witnessed the whole scene, discreetly wiped away her own tears. It was a private moment between mother and son, and she felt she should leave. But before she could, Brian called her. "Joanna, wait." "Yes, Mr. Brian. Thank you for everything, for taking care of my mother when I failed to do so, for having the courage to speak the truth even knowing you could lose your job. You are an extraordinary person." Joanna smiled through her tears. "I just did what was right. Your salary will be doubled from now on, and you'll have regular days off, paid vacation, everything you deserve and more." "Mr. Brian, you don't have to—" "Yes, I do. And one more thing. You're no longer just an employee in this house. You're part of the family. You proved that today." Joanna nodded, too emotional to speak, and retreated to the kitchen to prepare dinner. The days that followed were ones of adjustment and healing. Brian cancelled all his non-urgent professional commitments and dedicated himself fully to caring for his mother. He prepared her meals, helped her bathe when her back hurt too much, and talked with her for hours about everything and nothing. Eleanor was moved to the main guest room, the one Patricia had always reserved for important visitors. Brian personally chose soft sheets, comfortable pillows, and filled the room with fresh flowers. He put old photos on the walls, pictures from when he was a child, from when the family was whole and happy. Dr. Evans returned several times to monitor her recovery. With proper rest, nutritious food, and above all with love and care, Eleanor began to improve. The back pain subsided, the bruises faded, and something even more important began to return: the sparkle in her eyes. One Sunday afternoon, Brian and Eleanor were sitting on the veranda, drinking tea and watching the sunset paint the Chicago sky with shades of orange and pink. It was one of those rare moments of perfect peace where words were unnecessary. "Mom," Brian said finally, breaking the silence, "can I ask you a question?" "Of course, my son. Why did you never tell me? Why did you endure it all in silence?" Eleanor was quiet for a moment, searching for the right words. "Because I was afraid. Afraid you wouldn't believe me. Afraid you would choose her. Afraid of being left completely alone, and besides, I felt guilty. I thought that maybe I deserved that treatment for being a burden to you." "You were never a burden, Mom. Never. And I deeply regret not showing you that every single day. You were busy building your life. It's normal. That's no excuse. Professional success, money, social status, none of it is worth anything if I lose the people who truly matter. And you are the most important person in my life." The tears returned, but this time they were tears of happiness. Eleanor took her son's hand and squeezed it tightly. "I love you, my son." "I love you too, Mom, and I'm going to spend the rest of my life proving it." In the following weeks, the house was completely reorganized. Eleanor no longer did any housework. Her only job was to recover, to rest, to enjoy the life she still had ahead of her. Brian hired a second housekeeper to help Joanna, ensuring that neither of them was overworked. Patricia tried to get in touch a few times, sometimes with veiled threats, sometimes with elaborate apologies, sometimes with promises to change. But Brian was firm. He had started the separation process and was determined to move on. He discovered, through his lawyer, that Patricia had accumulated enormous debts in his name, buying clothes, jewelry, and luxurious trips. The perfect life she worked so hard to project was built on a house of cards that was now collapsing. One December morning, Brian woke up and went down to the kitchen, where he found his mother already awake, making coffee. She was humming an old song, a melody he recognized from his childhood. "Good morning, Mom. You're singing." Eleanor smiled, a true and luminous smile. I am. You know, it's been a long time since I felt so light. It's as if a huge weight has been lifted from my shoulders. I'm happy to hear that. And you, my son, how are you? Brian sat at the table and accepted the cup of coffee his mother offered him. I'm fine, more than fine, actually. Oh, it's strange, I thought I'd feel lost without Patricia. After all, we spent 5 years together. But the truth is, I feel free, like I can finally breathe again. That's because you're being true to yourself, to your values, to what really matters. You were always wise, Mom. Not wise, just experienced. And I've learned that in life, in the end, what remains are the relationships we build, the love we give and receive. Everything else is temporary. They had coffee together, talking about plans for the future. Brian wanted to take a trip with his mother, maybe to the coast, a quiet place where she could completely relax. Eleanor was enthusiastic about the idea. It had been years since she had traveled. Joanna entered the kitchen just then, carrying the mail that had just arrived. Among the letters was an elegant envelope with the letterhead of a well-known law firm. Brian opened it and read it quickly. It was confirmation that the divorce had been officially initiated. Patricia had signed the papers without contesting, probably because her lawyer had advised her that she had no case. The evidence against her was irrefutable. "It's over," Brian said, showing the paper to his mother. "It's officially over. How do you feel?" "Relieved and grateful." Grateful? That all this happened before it was too late. Imagine if Patricia had managed to send you to that nursing home. If I had woken up just a few months later, I might never have discovered the truth. Eleanor shuddered at the thought, but it didn't happen. And now we have a second chance. Both of us. And we're going to make the most of it. I promise I'll make every day count. The months that followed were a time of rebuilding. Brian reduced his workload, delegated more responsibilities to his partners at the firm, and began prioritizing quality time with his mother. They had dinner together every night, talked about their day, shared stories. Eleanor also began to reconnect with old friends she had lost touch with during the years she lived under Patricia's thumb. It was as if she were being reborn, recovering not only her physical health, but also the identity that had been systematically erased. One special afternoon, Brian came home with a surprise. He had bought back the family's old house, the one where Eleanor had raised her son, where she had so many happy memories. The current owner was selling, and Brian, using his savings and some investments, managed to make the purchase. "Mom, I have something to show you." He drove to the house, which was in an older Chicago neighborhood, far from the ostentation of Lincoln Park. When they stopped in front, it took Eleanor a few seconds to recognize it. "Brian, I don't believe it. Is this our old house?" "Yes, and now it's ours again." The tears came instantly. Eleanor got out of the car in a state of shock, looking at the familiar facade, the garden where she had planted roses, the porch where Brian used to play as a child. "How did you manage?" "I saved, I invested, and I decided it was worth every penny. Because this house has a soul, Mom. It has history. It has love within its walls." They went inside together, and Eleanor walked through each room with reverence, touching the walls, remembering specific moments that had happened there. The kitchen where she prepared dinner every night, the living room where the family gathered on Sundays, the bedroom where she had rocked Brian to sleep so many times. "Can we live here again?" she asked hopefully. "We can. In fact, I've already started bringing some things over. I thought we could make this our main home. We can sell or rent the other one." "And you won't miss the luxury, the ostentation?" Brian shook his head with conviction. "No. I've learned that real luxury isn't in big houses or expensive objects. It's in having peace, in being surrounded by people who truly love you. And I have that here, with you." The move happened gradually over the following weeks. Joanna, of course, was invited to continue working with them in the new house. She accepted with joy, bringing her sons to see the place. Eleanor quickly grew fond of the boys, who treated her like a surrogate grandmother. Life in the old house was completely different from life in the Lincoln Park mansion. It was simpler, more authentic, more human. There were conversations in the kitchen while they prepared dinner together. There was music playing on the radio. There was genuine laughter that echoed through the walls. One Christmas Eve, Brian and Eleanor were decorating the tree together. It was a family tradition they had abandoned in recent years when Patricia insisted on hiring professional decorators to do everything. But now, doing it themselves, they realized how much they had missed. "You know, Mom," Brian said as he hung a star on top of the tree, "I was thinking. All this time, I thought I needed to give you material comfort, luxury, the best house possible. But what you really needed was much simpler." "What was that?" "To be seen, to be heard, to be loved. And I failed at that terribly. But you learned, and that's what matters. Not everyone has the humility to recognize their mistakes and change. I almost lost you, Mom, and it terrifies me when I think about what could have happened. But you didn't. I'm here. We're together. And we'll stay together. Always." They hugged, there in front of the half-decorated Christmas tree, with the lights blinking softly and creating dancing shadows on the walls. It was a simple moment, but one laden with meaning. It was proof that true love, when nearly lost, can be recovered. It was proof that it's never too late to do the right thing. On Christmas Day, the house was full. Joanna and her sons were there. Some old neighbors Eleanor had reconnected with. Even Dr. Evans stopped by for a social visit. There was no ostentation, no expensive champagne or overly sophisticated food. But there was joy. There was human warmth. There was genuine connection. And that night, as everyone chatted animatedly in the living room, Brian looked around and felt a deep gratitude. He had lost a marriage. He had lost a luxurious lifestyle. He had lost the illusion of perfection that Patricia had created. But he had regained something infinitely more valuable. He had regained his mother, his humanity, his soul. Eleanor, watching, her son from across the room, also felt a peace she hadn't known in years. She had survived the worst period of her life, had found a strength she didn't know she possessed, and was now surrounded by true love. Yes, there were scars. Yes, there were painful memories she would always carry. But there was also healing, there was renewal, there was hope. And as the year came to a close and a new one began, they both knew they had received the greatest gift of all, a second chance, a chance to do things right, to value what truly matters, to build a life based on love and not on appearances. Years later, when Brian would tell this story to his friends, he always ended it the same way. Life teaches us hard lessons, but it's those lessons that turn us into better people. He almost lost his mother to blindness and ambition. He almost let the manipulation of a cruel person destroy the most important relationship in his life. But he woke up in time, and that was the greatest victory he could have ever achieved. Eleanor, at 75, was stronger and happier than ever. She had become a beloved figure in the community, always ready to help her neighbors, always with a kind word to offer. And every night, before she went to sleep, she gave thanks for having survived, for being rescued, for having found her way back home. Because home, she had learned, is not a place. It's where you are with the people who truly love you. And she had finally found her home again. End of story. Dear listeners, we hope the story of Eleanor and Brian has touched your heart. If you were moved by this journey of resilience, please leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and tell us in the comments what stood out to you the most. Every day we bring intense stories like this one, which reveal the deepest side of the human soul and make us reflect on what truly matters in life. Always remember, it's never too late to recognize our mistakes, protect those we love, and build relationships based on true love and respect. We'll see you in the next episode with another story that will touch your heart.